So welcome back on the program. Let's quickly bring you up to speed on this particular development on livestock farming in Nigeria. Is a lucrative venture that provides opportunity for entrepreneurs to tap into the country's vast agricultural sector. With a growing demand for meat and other animal products, Nigeria offers the affordable market for livestock farming, particularly the poultry product. Poultry farming in Nigeria is one of the most popular profitable livestock businesses in Nigeria, with animals such as chicken, turkeys, dogs, and guinea fowl reared primarily for its meat and eggs. According to reports, Nigeria is the second largest chicken producer in Africa and has the largest annual egg production in the country. Joining us in the studio is the MD CEO of FACO West Africa Poultry, Femi Adelayo. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much.
Good morning, Mani. Good morning, Alami.
For joining us on the program.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Good morning. All right, sir, can you bring us up to speed what we have in the livestock sector, your overview of the sector?
Well, it's a sector that has been challenged, but it is a sector that has amazing potential. Perhaps I should flip that. See, it's a sector that has amazing potential, but then it has also been challenged. FACO West Africa, for example, we've been in the industry for over 47 years. So we've seen the trajectory and the dynamics of the poultry sector and the livestock sector in Nigeria. And you found that it's gone up, it's gone down. And with the new Ministry for Livestock, the new opportunities that are available, the potentials there, it's on its way up.
All right, this is coming at a time where, farmers are actually complaining. Those who are actually planting are complaining, and, bringing so many experts here, they've said perhaps we should be looking at a collaboration with those in poultry, livestock, and those who plant. So that could serve as a source of, fertilizer for them. But how well have we fared in terms of, supporting farmers? Not just those who plant, provide food, the rice, and all of that, but livestock farmers who serve as the major source of protein in the nation.
So there is a value chain in the agricultural sector. For example, in the livestock sector, whether it is poultry, cattle, or piggery, the raw materials, the most important part of it is the feed. 60 to 70% of what is required to run the livestock sector is feed, depending on the animal that you're looking at. Poultry, for example, 60 to 70%. The feed comes from two major components, maize and soya. Now, the maize and soya will be planted by the farmers. Now, if the farmers don't have enough maize and soya, because Nigeria produces about 10 million metric tons, which needs to be up to about 25 million metric tons of maize per annum. Now, if there is not enough maize and soya coming from the farms, right, it is hard for those people who have chickens or pigs or cattle to feed their animals, and then it means the cost of production goes up, the cost of transportation goes up, and then the cost of the chicken goes up.
Is that one of the key challenges you made mention earlier?
Absolutely. I mean, there are quite a number of challenges, but feed is a major challenge, The need for investment in the sector, the need to automate and mechanize, the need to ensure that we move away from, subsistence farming. There will be spaces for that, to ensure that we automate, we mechanize, we produce in a capacity that is huge. Come on, we're going to be 400 million Nigerians in 2050. And we need to feed these 400 million Nigerians. And that's just 25 years away. So you need to ensure that there's enough production of the raw materials to feed the industry. You need to have investment in that industry. Finance, understandable finance for that industry to make sure that, look, those who want to invest, those who want to set up farms, those who want to maintain them, the strategy to ensure that it is productive.
Who are these those? You've been talking those we need to. Who are those people you are addressing?
So, for example, it's a value chain.
All right.
And it is incomprehensible for anyone to work in silo, which means that everyone is a part of it. Those of us who are equipment producers and manufacturers, those who are agri extension workers, the genomists, the experts, the bankers, government policy, the research institutions. It has to be a synergy of everyone coming together. Clearly, we can see that the government has put in a plan in place with the Ministry for Livestock, the Presidential Committee for Livestock. So there's a plan in place. Now, it's for us to tap into these things. So when I say those, I'm also part of those because we have a passion and a mandate to ensure that this country goes forward, through the livestock sector. And if you look at the numbers, we have to get it right.
This is coming at a time where we're also facing, food insecurity. A recent figure by the National Bureau of Statistics says a larger percentage of Nigerians are below the poverty line. And, experts have said it's not likely for us to tackle this even in this year, the later part of this year, and also the earlier part of this year. But talk to us about how key this sector is. Perhaps if we can address this sector, it's a step forward in addressing food insecurity in the country.
Olamide, if you don't fix food insecurity, we might not be able to go as far as we want to. The livestock sector produces protein, which is chicken, meat, eggs, fish. Imagine that a child that is 5, we just had a guest talk about the health of young people, right? At the age of 5, a child that has not eaten enough protein, eggs, cannot develop their brains. So imagine that in 20 years, because of nutritional insecurity, you're going to raise a generation of young people that are unable to process at the level that the international community or the world requires. 400 million people. You have to be able to feed the nation. You have to be able to provide jobs. The number of people who will move from the rural areas to the urban areas is going to increase over the next years. So you have to feed them. So it is critical in many ways that I can mention even on this show.
Well, there's this myth that livestock farming is meant for the rural areas, not for the urban areas. So try to educate Nigerians on how we can now start ensuring that those in the urban and the rural collaborate to ensure that livestock farming becomes a very viable sector in the country where Nigerians can tap into it.
So most people feel it's for the rural areas because there is a mindset about if you're rural, you're poor, you're dirty, you're in a place where you're not, you don't have soil or whatever it is. But it's not true, really. It's a myth. And you've said it, it's a myth. There has to be a collaboration between the rural areas and the urban areas. There are different types of farming that can be done in the urban areas, right? Even in the rural areas, if you have large farms for poultry, for example, you can't situate it in the city. It's not practicable. So it has to be a bit far from where people are. Those are farms. So those are rural areas. But then if you find when we mechanize, we automate, these so-called distance places where these farms exist, they have technology, they have amenities, they have internet, they have access to all kinds of things. Some of these things will prevent more people from leaving those rural areas, right, into the urban areas, plugging it with jobs that, are a bit hard to find. So it's a myth. It's not rural versus urban, but it's more about development versus underdevelopment.
Having that consciousness that we need to develop the sector, that's a point I'm making. Having that consciousness that you don't have to say it's an urban, it's a rural thing. We don't need to do that in the urban areas.
I mean, look, it's not a rural-urban conversation. It's a development conversation. Right. So wherever we need to get to get it done, we get there done. Right. Even in livestock farming, there's some things you can do in the urban areas. There's hydroponics, there's vertical farming, there are things like that. And those things are viable. I mean, Lagos State government is doing some of these things exceptionally well, and it's increasing every day. At the same time, we have the land, 19 million hectares of land. We have the population, we have the resources, we have the intellect. What we need is the passion, the investment, the consistency in the policy to ensure that we get this done. So it's not about rural or oral. It's about what do we need to do to develop.
And, this week also we saw the president also, hammering on the governors to ensure that they should take advantage of the resources they have in the state to, help us address this concern. But don't you think it's because poultry, livestock generally, is more privatized in this climate? As with other countries where the government is in charge of, rearing these animals are reared at the national level. What we see now is, individual owners who just decide to buy and sell at their own pace. Is that what is affecting the sector? It's not something we can actually, hold the government accountable to.
Mr. President gets it, because the policies that he's put in place ensures that many of these things can come to reality. But in many climes, it's a balance. Poultry business is business. It is agribusiness, right? And, what makes business successful is that there is a policy that ensures, government can't be in everything, right? What we do need to do is to systemize it, is to structure it in such a way that we get the data. For example, you have all kinds of data coming in from all kinds of places. NBS has data, FAO has data, and some of them are true to the extent of which they are. But in agribusiness, you have to ensure that business grows, so that everybody will find their level, the large scale, the middle scale, the small scale. But what we need to do is we need to have enough people to know who is where, when, doing what, how, so that we can say, actually, we have this number. Actually, we need to move these resources. For example, there was the school feeding program some time back, which encouraged some farmers to go into poultry production, for eggs production. Those ones created trackability for the government. So the government, to be honest, the government can't be everywhere. The government can't manage everywhere. But it must create policies to be able to ensure that businesses can develop, and leapfrog this country. Automation, mechanization.
I want us to be intentional at this time. And to that young Nigerian that is watching you, it's a new year. Yeah. How can they invest into poultry farming? Because if you're saying that we all have to go into it, how viable it is, how can they invest into it, the sector?
Great question, Emmanuel, great question. I consider, livestock sector as, there's a table on which investing in it stands. It requires passion, it requires knowledge, it requires structure, and it requires finance in whatever level that you have. So that's the table on which it stands. The passion.
Why did you put finance the last option there?
Because as much as people think finance is important, which is important, but if you have money but you don't have passion, you're not going anywhere. If you have money, you don't have the knowledge, you're not going. If you have money, you don't have structure. Look, Emmanuel, farms have closed in this country. Is it knowledge? Is it structure? It's not. Usually, sometimes some of them have the funds to go into it. They go into it big, right? And then a few years down the line, it's closed. Some of this is, structural, right? Some of it is the banks not understanding that you can't put money into poultry and expect your return in 6 months. It's not practicable. And some people come and say, oh, look, you do this broiler farming, you make so big returns, and everybody goes into it, and then they lose their money and be like, we have to tell ourselves the truth. Absolutely. So the knowledge, passion, structure, finance, and there's a lot of possibilities and money inside there at the end of it. Absolutely, no doubt.
It's a fine place to live. It's MD CEO of FACO West Africa Poultry Farming, Mr. Femi Adilayome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mano. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Up next,